What's up, guys? My name is Ray Volpe and I'm back on Disciple. This time I'm here to stay and we're going to be going over my new track Elastic off of my new EP Rise of the Volpetron. If you're too lazy, go ahead, check in the description. You can grab the main bass patch, but if you're looking to learn poorly from me, then we will jump right in and let's just, why not, huh? Starting this track off, I wanted it to have a very big intro feel, right? I wanted this to feel like it's the opening to something new. It's the next chapter. I'm here, I signed a Disciple, I signed my life away, and I'm ready to show what I can offer. So I decided to use labs, which I've never done before. This whole track actually is a lot of stuff I've never done before. And I have these two patches specifically. Oh, there we go. Very spooky sounding. And this one here. And Labs is free. If you aren't aware, it's by Spitfire Audio, and you can just grab a bunch of these free banks of awesome sounds. There's modular stuff, there's, ambient stuff, organic stuff. It's just so useful of a bank library to have. And I just, threw whatever sounded cool together, and I thought that they matched each other nicely. So I decided to get some underlayers in there and fill things up a bit, which is where a lot of this ambience is coming from. If we take a look, we have a couple X and G samples here from their splice pack, which is really sick. It's a little heart monitor. Oh, look at that, that's so good. And we also have a couple impact kind of sounds, which this one here is kind of like a little weird whoosh kind of sound that I have trail throughout the track, and it's kind of helps it kind of glues things together in a nice way. And I think it really helps bring the energy up throughout the build up and also through the intro when the rest of the sounds start to kind of come in here. And we have a couple more, but some random stuff here and there. Shout out Bandles as well. It's awesome little tonal texture. About halfway through the intro, we start jumping into this interesting distorted choir sound that I don't know how I stumbled upon this sample specifically, but if I turn everything off, we're dealing with this. Which you can hear is very chopped up, just kind of spliced until I was happy with it and transposed around to make some type of melody that I was happy with. So I decided to process that using Little Altar Boy and some of my usual OTT Camel Crusher stuff on here. So if we take a look at Little Altar Boy, there's two versions in there because I was using a VST and I'm on a new computer. It's a mess. Don't worry about it. We're here. We're alive. We're working. I boosted the drive all the way up and I left everything else the same in terms of pitch and format, and it just gave it this nice crunch. The saturation on it's so awesome. And then I decided to throw Electra X on here, a little low pad, something nice and filling on the mid lows to descend and kind of combat that high frequency of the actual kind of distorted choir. And you can hear we have a low pass on here. That way it's cut, all the highs are gone, and we're gonna have it slowly open up over time. As we start to go deeper into this, we also now introduce this little high tapping sample, which is just like a random cinematic orchestral hit here from the Cashmere packs. Which you can hear they are triplets. This is the first time I'm starting to show that this song is not, in your standard format or whatever. I don't know the name that's opposite of triplets. Someone in the comments is probably a musical genius and they're gonna correct me. Look, I don't know the terms, all right? I'm just here and I thought it sounded cool. Like I was saying earlier, I decided to do things a lot differently than I usually do, using things I don't normally use and also diving into new, formulas for myself, which is why I used labs, which is why I'm actually making this song in triplets, and that's not the end of it, so we're gonna definitely dive into that a little bit more later. Right before the build, we get into the climax. This is where everything is starting to really heat up. The energy is really starting to rise for this big cinematic intro. So we have a couple more elements at play. We have this distorted key right here from Omnisphere, following that same melody. And I used reverb and overdrive. I really like doing this where I'll just throw reverb on something, have a big amount of decay time or like a lot of tail, and I just distort the fuck out of it with overdrive or saturator, anything that makes sense, because you get this really awesome crisp tone out of it, and it just sounds so cool. I think it just sounds really cool. I like it. All right, it just sounds good to me. I also now start to have elements from the drop, those bass sounds, come into play slightly as well through here. So if we look at the end of every couple bars, you're going to hear either one of these high screeches or one of my growls. If we take a look, there's one of them right there, which we're going to get into how to make that in a little bit. And we also have my signature growl, slowly coming in with, I think, a low pass as well, similarly to the high screech sound as well. And just drowned in reverb to help it feel like it's sitting in that space. And as things start to evolve, of course, I start to add more of these orchestral cinematic sounds, just more hits from the Cashmere packs. I'm just literally finding different ones and I'm just matching them up and transposing them slightly to make some type of, nice rhythm that flows with the original kind of higher one. And I also have these little impacts every couple bars as well. And then a little triplet loop under that. To add some swing. And then the last piece before we actually dive out will be this little intro, or just alternating notes here. Just thought it sounded cool. It's a random Electra X sound. I kind of got it when I was looking for the pads for earlier in the intro, and I just thought it sounded nice in contrast to everything else that was going on, and it was a little faster paced compared to that little slow key lead. So everything kind of helps complement each other, and it helps flow over time, and it helps pick up the pace to lead us in to the really sick build that we have going on right here.
You have taken the lead.
Taking a look deeper into this, we have the first vocal sample come in here, which I usually record most of my pre-drops. On occasion, I'll find something random online, like is what I did here, and I was like, let me just go ahead, let me do something a bit different. I'm gonna go just dig through Splice some video game samples, and I found this one where this guy just like, you have taken the lead, and I was like, oh, that's fucking sick, this dude, he's taking the lead. I mean, it must be pretty serious. I like how everything kind of just jumped out with the little sample here. It's like a little stomp. And it just sounded like everything was just closed, everything, like the door was just shut on that intro. We're into a new territory now. It's almost kind of completely separate, which I really like. And then we get into this awesome rhythm where it's just the triplets of the basses going bum, 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 bum. You get this really cool marching kind of sensation because of the basses. They're kind of going in triplet formations like dun, 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 dun. And it helps really build the energy here in a really cool way, and it helps reflect the theme of Rise of the Volpetron with, the whole Volpetron, it's just, hey, he's rising up, he's starting this uprising, this revolution. It's all starting to kind of come together now, and you start to really feel that within the first build-up, which is the first song on the EP. That first bass pluck sound is just something I threw together really quickly in Serum. And it's just a default sound, boost the unison to 12. I added a second oscillator, leaving that at 1. That way, while everything was spread out on the first oscillator, we had one that was grounded, and that's really all that's going on. I just took the envelope and I dropped the decay and sustain. That way, it was nice and short and turned into a pluck. No effects, just stuff on the post-processing, being my usual OTT Camel Crusher combo. Shout out to the swag rack, you know what that is if you're a long-time viewer. And I dropped the lows on the OTT just so it was easier to not, get any mud going on there and it didn't get too messy. And that's sitting around -8 decibels or so, sitting nicely in the background, but still loud enough to be heard and be present. Most of the work on here is coming from the effects, being the siren and this little vocal riser as well. So we take a look at the siren, another thing I just threw together in Serum. And that's just another default patch. Only boosts the unison to 2. And I went ahead, and if you look at the matrix here, it's just this LFO1 set to a quarter note, which we actually can automate, and we have it set to the master tune. It's only going one way, and that's slowly going to rise. If I show you the automation on here, this is on the modulation amount. That means as the track progresses and as the bars continue, the amount that it's pitch bending is just going to go higher and higher from each little LFO. So you can see here when the build really kicks in, it starts going crazy. Gets super bubbly, super lasery, and it sounds really fun. And above that, we have this little Bandle sample here, just a random vocal. I don't know where they got this from. So sick. Which I decided a lot of people like putting vocals on the offbeat, so I wanted to put it on the downbeats and have this really short delay on here to make it sound a bit more robotic and have that just slowly pitch up and up and up. And it just helps bring the energy up and build all that. Sounds so cool. But we do have a little stop, a little break between sections on the build here. With this a little mini sweep here and a little laughing sample, which I thought sounded so sick. Which all we have on here, we have a little bit of nectar, but it's not too important. It's just bringing the performance down and adding some voices on each side. But it's the OTT, the Camel Crusher, and the same thing as I did with the other vocal riser, which is the short delay on just the high end. It sounds super cool, and it makes it sound super robotic, and I really like how that sounds. And I just kind of have a frequency shifter on here to pitch down as it's going, and it just starts sounding really demonic and really glitchy and kind of just fucked up. I thought it sounded really awesome. Keeping that and having that play throughout the build. So if you listen closely, you can actually hear it. And I was really happy with how that turned out, so I was pretty stoked on that. And that'll take us directly into the pre-drop from here, where it's that really cool, just none shall survive, random game sample from the same pack. And I was happy that everything in this kind of flowed well and they all were from the same, vocal. That way, everything kind of just felt cohesive and it didn't feel like they were just kind of random things kind of piecing together. And on here, all we have, just a little bit of actual editing on here. If I pull out the full sample for you.
None shall survive.
It was a little laugh in between, and I was like, oh, well, that's really cool, but I don't need all this space. I want it to fit just in one, one bar, just like the 1, 2, 3, 4. I needed only that period of time. So I went ahead and I cut it a little short and I blended that together.
None shall survive.
And I have that little reverb tail at the end there, which sounds super awesome thanks to the Bass Clef's Easy Washout, which is a free audio effect that you can get online if you just do a quick Google. My usual processing on here, the OTT Camel Crusher combo, and the same thing with that delay trick. And I was super happy with that reverb tail. It just sounds so full. But I needed something else there because it wouldn't have been full enough. We need one more thing in there to help that drop feel like it hits impact, right? Like,
none shall survive.
Like, it's cool, but it's like, all right, well, there's nothing there to really kind of hit you into the drop. So I was searching through Splice forever, and I ended up finding this fucking whip sample. I also wanted to, add a little swing to it, so I warped it in a way where it would kind of just hit like with a nice little swing. And man, that shit slapped. All right, now for the moment you've all been waiting for. Let's get into the drop. I doubt you guys were here for the intro. Honestly, if you were here for the intro, you're a fucking real one, man. Anyway, looking at the bass here, it's a really cool kind of sound. It's kind of random on how this kind of came to be, because if we take a look, listen, it's just all one patch throughout, most of this entire drop. If we open up the patch here, everything is going on with FM and sync. I talked about this before in a lot of my own breakdowns, and I think on the last one I did with you guys on Disciple about last year with Battle of the Bros. But we're using 2 analog wavetables, FM from B and sync on this. And if you are too lazy, of course, you can jump over to the description, pre-save the EP, and you will get this patch for free. Most of the pitchiness and the wackiness of the sound is coming from the sync, and that's what's giving it that kind of elastic sound, which is why I call it elastic in general. So taking a look at the B warp, the sync, everything is kind of low, and that's why everything is kind of all out of whack. It's that combined with the Scream low pass filter on here. But if I were to take this and bring it up, you start to get a normal sound, which is the sound that you hear a little bit later in the drop as well. But as I bring it back down, you start getting the interesting whippiness out of that sound, and it starts to just pitch around like crazy. And it sounds so sick. I was really, really, really happy with how that turned out. And like I said, a lot of that's also coming from that scream filter. It sounds almost just like dead noise at that point without the scream filter on here. I swear, adding Scream to Serum was probably one of the best things ever. It's all being ran out of this one LFO for the most part, which is linked to the first oscillator as well as the sub, just the levels on that. And then we have the Scream filter itself, the cutoff being kind of pushed with that there as well. I have the resonance all the way up, my drive is up pretty high, and the Scream's a little over halfway. And that's what's really pushing this to make it scream, make it sound elastic, and make it, I mean, I call it puberty as the channel, so it sounds like a voice is cracking the whole time. If we take a look at the effects tab here, we have only a little bit of hyper dimension, just a little bit on the hyper side, that way it's a little spread. I also have a sine fold on here for the distortion here, and it's just, what I like to do a lot with the distortion is I don't like when things are too overly distorted. You get a lot of those clicks, you get a lot of issues where it might be just, clipping too hard, and what I like to do to kind of combat that is I use whatever I'm, kind of automating the sound with, in this case it's the LFO1, and I throw it on the drive and the mix. That way, as it reaches its peak at the top of the LFO, that's when the distortion will be at the top, and then as things close on the LFO, the distortion will actually kind of ease out and calm down as well. That way, it doesn't oversaturate, and whenever the sound is closed, it's not going to get that harsh click effect that you might get if the distortion was boosted all the way up. So that's something I like to do personally to kind of avoid that. There was a phaser on here, but I ended up turning it off. It wasn't really making too much of a difference. And I also have some built-in OTT, what I like to call it, some multi-band dynamic compression on here. I just take it and I turn it on. I boost the gain a little bit. We're talking about 12 decibels or so. As for the EQ, we have everything set to peaks on both sides, and I am automating the frequencies with that same LFO. Just that way, it just brings things out slightly more. Very slight difference. I don't know if you can hear it. And what I like to do to top off all of my sounds, I use the MG Low 6. This is the default filter that opens up when you throw filter on in the FX panel. And I do this because without it, everything is too bright, too harsh, too noisy. It's just gross. Let me just... It hurts. It's not fun. So I like to throw my cutoff all the way down, and I link it to my LFO or whatever I'm using to automate the sound. And I only open it always less than 100%. I'm talking maybe 60, 70, 80% of the way, and I boost the resonance just a little bit. That way, everything will close nicely, and it sounds just a lot more neat. Way cleaner, way cleaner. And you might be concerned about the high end at that point, but the OTT is going to bring it back out, and we also have some saturation on the sound. Like, everything is getting distorted to fucking all hell, so it's not too much to worry about. After Serum, we do have a spectral resonator, which we'll get to in a little bit, but after that, we have saturator, just an analog clip boosted to about almost 8 decibels, and we have a little bit of chorus from Ableton 10, because there is a difference, and Ableton 11 chorus sucks, in my opinion. That's a hot take, maybe not. Do you agree? Let me know. I need to know. And then I had some Yo-Man that I turned off, but I got some VR fat on here because you can't go wrong. And then I just topped it off with my usual OTT Camel Crusher combo. We have the output boosted on here, about 6 decibels or so, because it just wasn't hitting as loud as I needed it to. And that's all that's on here, excluding the bass clef's easy washout. That's always on basically any of my basses. That way I wanted to get some reverb or open up some space. It's just useful in the moment. But something I mentioned a little while ago was the spectral resonator, which is another new thing that I decided to try out on this, which is brand new to Ableton 11, and this thing is insane. I always like to talk about Corpus and how much I love Corpus. This fucking thing is just as good. I swear to God, man, these resonators are just killing me right now. If we take a look at the second half of the drop, everything sounds like it gets higher pitched, which technically it does, but it's mainly due to the spectral resonator here. If I turn it back off, it's the same exact sound as the first half of the drop. And it also sounds a little grittier, especially in the mid-lows. I'm gonna group this down and I'm going to turn it off and throw a new one on there so I can show you guys a little bit of what it's about. If I just turn it on as default, sounds a little strange. What you want to do with spectral resonator is you want to link it to itself in terms of MIDI or link it to a MIDI reference. That way it'll pull those notes. So here I'm going to go MIDI from, and I'm going to find the puberty bass, and I'm going to select that and turn on MIDI. Now it's going to pull those notes exactly from this exact MIDI, and it's going to be in the E flat D sharp note. So now it sounds a bit better because at least everything's in key. So from here I can go ahead and drop my decay. I can even get weirder with it and turn it to granular. Imagine that as a layer. That'd be fucking dope as hell. It's just whatever you want to really do. There's so many cool things here. The harmonics, you bring those down. So many awesome different possibilities here. But what I did was I actually brought the stretch all the way up. Which is super strange. So I decided to maybe mess around with the pitch shift as well. And now you can hear where that higher octave is coming from. It's so awesome. I absolutely recommend using this if you do have Ableton 11. Just honestly a game changer. And let's listen to this in context now. So at the end there, you can actually start to hear the pitchy, elastic, puberty bass start to turn into a normal sound thanks to the sync going all the way back up now to where it actually makes sense and it starts to sound a bit normal. I really like to keep my sounds in one channel if I can. Here, I do go against that slightly by having a separate track for, I think, yeah, right here, these little turnarounds and these little extra screamers. I only separated this out that way I can have a bit more chorus. Otherwise, it's the same exact sound, just the sync is just in a different spot as the rest. And they all, you know, flow very well together. You can hear that they're the same. I think it's really telling whenever you have a song and the drop sounds like there's maybe 4 or 5 different sounds, but whenever you see the breakdown of it, or if you get to look into the project, if you're like on someone's Patreon or whatever the case may be, you see, hey, these are actually 1 or 2 sounds, and it's just a lot of different, you know, movements with the warp modes, or it's like an effect like, you know, a corpus or a spectral resonator that does a lot of the work. I think that stuff is really cool because it can show you how much you can do with very little. The other big thing on the downbeat here, we have a brass sample here, which sounds super cool because I just threw corpus on it, did the same thing as spectral resonator, you know, just chalked it up with the MIDI reference, which you can see there's a brass reference here, just sitting at the same note, and I just have it set to plate. It just sounds cool. Sounds a little more metallic. I just like the way that came out, so that's just kind of chilling on the downbeats as well. I don't know. And underneath all of that, we have the hard trap sound, which I've been using a lot on this EP. It's just a super detuned saw wave, basically. And I just pitch it around a bunch with auto pan to make it kind of wobble. And so you have... And it just sounds super cool when you layer that with the actual bass, because now it starts to sound a little more full, and it also gives it just a nice layer. Especially right there, it starts really building that energy and the pacing starts to really pick up. Moving forward, we have this cool little turnaround, this dystopian chord as I call it, just something I found inspired. Just sounded super like kind of dark and evil, but kind of also futuristic in a way. Like maybe just not the future that we're hoping to have. So I like the way that that sounded, and I just kind of paired it with this little other just paired it with a little lead from Electra X. And everything kind of sounded nice, and it just kind of gave it a little cute little swing that it just helped pair nicely to continue into the second half of the drop. Something cool here, you can hear when there's a little scream break. You hear the bass kind of chug back in like bop, bop, bop. And it has that, it sounds like it's kind of coming back in with a low pass, but it's really just the harmonics inside a spectral resonator. You can see it being automated right here. And I just thought that was really cool. And you can also hear it turning on and off, going back and forth from the high octave and back to the low. Thought that was pretty cool. So this takes us into a little bridge into a mini build between drops, and I was pretty hyped about this because it just wanted to have it kind of feel like it was a little stompy, and I didn't want to do something standard where it just goes right into another build. So I wanted to have something to kind of give you a break while also not giving you a break, I guess, at the same time, which led me to use that cool choir sample again. I think this time it's pitched up a bit though. Yeah, definitely. Both the pitch and the formant are both boosted an octave, still have the drive all the way up. The chorus, using Ableton 11's chorus, I admit this time, 50% on there, and the usual OTT Camel Crusher combo with a reduced ambience. And that's just there to help give this interesting pitchy vibe, because I love how it's kind of all over the place while still having a melody. It kind of hints back to, you know, the drop itself. It's kind of just pitchy and all over the place, but it does have a flow and a melody that you can kind of yell out. So I thought it was just a cool little addition there. And we have those low pads return from the intro as well. And now that we hit the halfway point, I have this main channel that has everything, right? The ambience, the effects, the synths, the basses. I have a phaser on here, a phaser flanger, I should say, but we're only using the phaser, and that starts to activate halfway, and that's when the build starts to come in. You can hear it, everything starts getting really weird. The frequency builds as well. It's super fast. And it gets super bubbly and just lasery, and it just sounds really fun. And I was happy to have something there that helped to spice up the build while also doing your kind of traditional little formula to lead into the next section, which is just a deeper version of the drop, basically. A little heavier, a little slower in pacing as well.
Take back control.
And if we take a look, this sound is going to be pretty familiar to you if I turn off the spectral resonator. It's the same exact sound as the first drop. It's just the sync is in a different spot, and we have that spectral resonator to really highlight those mid-lows. As well as some corpus as well. Help bring up and widen it a bit, and it just adds that metallic essence to it, which I really like. There was something cool about the emptiness to this that I appreciated, because it just felt like it had the whole room to itself in a way, if that makes any sense to you. And I had that little spectral resonator version of the bass, just those deep notes following the original pattern, and then I have the actual original puberty elastic bass kind of come back every now and then to kind of remind you that we're still here in the same song, everything's kind of normal. And then I decided to just kind of have everything kind of go apeshit in terms of it just being kind of just that chugging, and it sounded really cool in context going out of this kind of deeper sound here. So if you listen in context, and it's like, I just love that. I thought it sounded so heavy, and just like if you're in the crowd, you start jumping, you're like, oh shit, this is crazy. And I had the siren on top of that from the build originally come back to help build some of that energy back as well. And that'll take us out of the drop actually. All the lows are cut off here, except for the sub, now that it can just kind of have that marching sensation come back, that ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba, you know, just kind of slowly kind of come back until the second half here. That low end starts to come back following the low pads at that point. We have the choir come back, and everything starts to become a bit familiar with the intro again.
You have taken the...
And this will take us directly into the second build, where everything is practically the same. The main difference being that laugh sample being a slightly different kind of pitch because of the frequency shifter coming up and opening up halfway through. And I just thought that sounded kind of sick, and now in this case it's going up and getting higher and higher. Sounding very psychotic and fun. This final third drop is basically the same thing as the first one, kind of taking you back home before the song ends. The main difference is being the sync placement on some of the sections here, like right here in the little late drop. Right there, it has a little more time when it's building up, and when the sync actually kind of gets its shit together and it gets less pitchy. It's kind of evolved from the first drop by having to be at a higher section now, so it sounds higher. It literally is, and it sounds way cooler, at least to me. And in the original project here, it actually goes back to being a higher pitched formant again. But I decided to change that at the very last minute. So what I did was I actually took the final export, the final master, because I really love the energy that brought. And I feel like this was a nice way. It's like, okay, final call. It's the end of the song. One last time. Everyone's hyped up, and it just kind of helps end the song on a higher note with more energy than it would have if I kind of kept things as it were here. I don't know, I just thought I would change it up a little bit, just slightly. And then everything kind of ends. Which, if you're wondering, the A-Ray come with the tune, that's actually, it's my friend Bach Nero, who was on my song Sellout a couple years ago, and he said that. And he's like, A-Ray, and I recorded myself going, come with the tune! It's a play on DJ, come with the tune. You know it. Don't pretend you don't know it. But that's basically this track, honestly. I had a lot of fun with this one because I wanted it to feel like a big opening, and I wanted it to be the first track on the EP. So I was like, let's just figure out how I can have this really set a statement and set a standard as well for the rest of the EP and the themes that kind of follow throughout. And I'm happy with how it turned out. And this also shows you, you know, it looks like there's a lot of tracks in here, but there's just really not, it's just not that much stuff. If I throw another one on here, we're talking less than 75 tracks. It's not too crazy. If you want to take a quick look at the drums, it's nothing too crazy. We got a dead mouse kick, we got barely alive snare, you know, that's it. We got some Ray Volpe hats in here, you know, nothing too crazy. We're just having fun. I don't process my drums. They just cut off the cymbals. That's it. There's nothing on here. Don't look at that. That's unrelated. All right. But some people get crazy. They transient shave. They do all this compression. I literally just throw a 6 sample in here. I have my kick at 3 fucking decibels over 0. Does that make any sense? No. Does it sound good? Yeah. That being said, thank you guys so much for watching. It feels great to be a part of the Disciple family now. And yeah, if you are too lazy to follow along to this, go ahead, check out the description. You can get a free download to the main bass sound. Go listen to Rise of the Volpetron EP, out this Friday, August 6th. Unless you're watching this in the future, then the shit been out. Bye!